In my latest episode of the Playmakers podcast, I sit down with Gary Keller, founder of Keller Williams Realty and one of the most influential authors in both real estate and in business. His Wall Street Journal bestseller, The One Thing, completely changed how I think about goal setting and planning, both in my personal life and in my business life. You may have noticed that Gary is no longer on the speaker circuit. In fact, one of his last public appearances was on the Tim Ferriss podcast about 4 years ago. So for this episode, he made a rare exception to join me for a wide-ranging conversation. We get Gary's take on where he thinks the market is, what brokerages are getting wrong, his predictions for 2026, and you may be surprised about the topic that he is researching in his lab. I also pressed him on KW's tech strategy and the deal he did with private equity. At one point, he even told me, "Andrew, that's none of your business." It was a great conversation. It kept me on my toes. The Playmakers podcast begins in 3, 2,
Welcome to the Playmakers Podcast, where we go inside the minds and moves of those shaping the future of real estate. With your host, Andrew Flachner.
Welcome back to the Playmakers Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Flachner, and this right here is a special episode, and here's why. My next guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. You know who Gary Keller is. You know what Keller Williams Realty is. Gary Keller is one of the most influential people in real estate, and I would argue one of the most influential people in business. Yes, he's built one of the largest real estate brands in the world, over 150,000 agents, more than $2 billion in distributed profit share. If you haven't had a chance to meet Gary, you may not fully appreciate why he was at the top of my list for the Playmakers podcast. Ever since I began my career in real estate back in 2006, I've been in close orbit of Gary. And over the last 2 decades, I've become convinced that Gary is one of the best educators in real estate and, without question, one of its greatest students. He's well-researched to almost an absurd degree, and he's written foundational books on how real estate is bought, how it's sold, how it's invested in, how it's flipped. I've read these books, and while he's no stranger to best-selling books, one of my favorite books, entitled The One Thing, hit the number one spot on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. I can tell you firsthand that we use the principles from this book to shape how my team at RealScout sets goals, how it sets strategy, and even how my wife and I think about where we invest our time. So it's had that kind of impact. I know you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. And without further ado, Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. I know it's early there, so I apologize.
Hey, that's all right. I'm excited to get started here. We've got a lot to unpack today, especially at a time when agents, teams, and brokerages are navigating so much change in the industry. I've teased this interview on social media, and people came out of the woodwork. Right now, everyone wants to know, what is Gary Keller thinking about the state of real estate? I noticed you don't do a lot of public interviews, and I know you did one a few years ago with Tim Ferriss, but you're not on the speaking circuit. Why is that?
Okay, back up for a second. The number is 185,000 globally.
I can't keep up, Gary. You're growing too fast.
You know, I have a fundamental philosophy, and that is that people that work with me are more important than people that don't. If I have a spare minute in my life, I don't know why I would be going outside of the people I'm in business with. I should seek more people inside. I'm not a hermit. I'm not a antisocial, but early in my career, I did all those things, and I looked up, and to be candid with you again, it didn't move my life or my business forward. And I said, you know what? People that work with me are more important, so I'm going to invest in them. It's the only reason. I love you. I appreciate what you do, and we have history together, and I really respect you and what you've built.
Well, thank you, Gary.
This is an honor for me to do this, but it's also in my own stupid way, honoring you.
Well, I very much appreciate that, Gary, and it makes it even more special that you're taking the time out of your day to share your knowledge with my audience. We're going to cover 3 big areas today. We're going to get a peek into Gary's process, how he thinks, maybe even a peek into what he's been researching. Of course, we'll get into some advice for agents, teams, and brokerage leaders. And then also, I'm curious where Keller Williams is in its story arc and how you're thinking about what's next. So I want to take our audience behind the curtain. Even in the weeks leading up to this recording, Gary, I've got a glimpse into your process and the sheer magnitude of time that you spend on research and writing and thinking. What does your research process look like? Diving into data, interviews, masterminds?
Yes, and yes. So it's, I call it immersion therapy. So if there's a topic that I think is important, I go deep. I do a deep dive. I'm currently into a project on fear. Why do people not do what they should do, right? They know what to do. They have motivation to do it. Why don't they do it? It's fear. And so I'm on my 20th book, and I just had 15 more delivered yesterday. So AI is great, but AI will give you selected information. And so it'll make the decisions for you as to what you actually experience, if that makes sense. And I really want to, I want to understand what the author, the way they viewed it, and how they view dealing with it. And just as an example, at some point in the research process, the interview, the books, absolutely AI, right? I have 4 AI programs open, and I'm asking them the questions too, and arguing with them. At some point, you literally lean back and you go, I get it, right? I've now delved into the minds of the 40 best books ever written on this subject, whether it be investing, right? Early in my career, I did that with Buffett. I just immersed myself into Warren Buffett, right? The greatest investor of all time in history, he and Charlie. And at some point, I came back and I said, I'm now done studying Warren. I'm not him. I will never be him. But the fundamental principles of Warren Buffett are so easy to understand and implement in your life. By the way, number 1, Warren Buffett, and that is only invest in what you know and understand. Number 2, make your money going in. Have a nice day. If you don't violate those two rules about investing money, you're going to be good in life.
So what led you down the path of studying fear?
Well, it's this idea again of think of it as this way. There's 3 buckets that we live in. One is the drive bucket, which is my motivation. There's a big argument that people go out and say, we should motivate people. And I go, you can't really motivate people. That's their why. You can't give them a why. You can motivate, AID, but you can't motivate them, right? And you shouldn't try. You should help them uncover what matters to them, right? But everyone's motivated. I always say that if you want to argue whether people are motivated or not, go to a big office building at 4:45, park your car, and watch what it looks like at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
Right.
Clears out, right? Everybody is motivated for the weekend. So I don't buy into the idea that people aren't motivated. I think people have dreams. I think they have hopes. I think people have desires. And they can be all levels of ambitious or not. But it's not zero motivation. Okay, so if they're motivated, why aren't they doing something? Okay. Do they know what to do and how to do it? Many times they don't, right? That's the box you would check. Okay, so you want something. Yes, I do. Do you know how to do it? Do you know what you need to do to get it and how to do it? If they don't, you stop there and you say, great, we're gonna immerse ourselves in a fundamental model or steps, and then we're going to teach these steps, right? It was Tony Robbins when I read Unlimited Power back in the day, which was life-changing for me, and I told him that. I got to meet him a few years ago, and I told him that you changed my life, but there's only one thing you said that changed it. The most successful people on this planet are model builders. And that made sense to me. And that was, if a subject mattered, if friendship mattered, if marriage mattered, if raising a kid mattered, if your health mattered. By the way, if lead generating, if helping buyers and sellers make good decisions, if that matters, go immerse yourself in the topic until the model emerges, until all of a sudden you look up. So you can see when you ask me this question, my mind, I have a model in my head. I have a drawing in my head that says, I want to do something. Why don't I? Right? And the first one says, do I have the motivation? Do I have the drive? The second one, is, do I know what and how to do it, right? And by the way, that's knowledge. So we go to that box and we say, okay, I'm going to fix that box. But if they're still not doing anything, guess what? Fear. I'm afraid.
That's right. And for everyone who is not following along on YouTube or Spotify video, be sure to go check out the Playmakers podcast on YouTube so you can see the drawings that Gary, in typical Gary fashion, is putting up on the whiteboard.
So why did Anthony Robbins say that? Number one is because I had a professor when I was in college, Andrew, and he said, you're pretty smart, Gary, but I need to tell you that people have lived before you. You might be advised before you make a decision to go find out what they learned and what advice they would give you. Otherwise, you're just going to reinvent the wheel, right? And I took that idea, and then in my 20s, I'm now studying Tony Robbins about modeling, and I went, I get it. People who lived before me. We shouldn't go to anything that matters without an understanding of the best steps to take. Why would you take the worst steps?
Right.
Why would you do that? What's your simple model? What's your, in my marriage, I have a simple model. Make sure my wife is living her best life. And that's it. And a lot of people say, well, what about you, Gary? What do you get out of this? What do you mean? What do I get? I get the best marriage ever. I get the best partner ever. I get the best love of my life ever. And it comes back to me tenfold. So I don't worry about me. I don't go in the relationship going, I need these things. I go in and I say, how is she doing? And I take care. And my whole goal is to take care of her in terms of supporting whatever it is that matters to her. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Why do people throw these models to the wind then? Are they impatient? Are they impulsive?
Do they have the motivation to live their best life? Because here's the truth about life, and that is you live your best life when you give your best effort to the things that matter most. I'll say it again. You live your best life when you give your best effort to the things that matter most. Okay, well, do you have anything that matters to you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, would your best effort be to figure out how the best way to do it would be? Oh, no, let's do it a crummy way. I know people have been selling real estate for, literally organized over 100 years. But you know what? I'm so smart. I'm not going to study any of that. I'm just going to do it. Because why would I study, right? No, if it matters to you, figure out how to best do it. And then we get back to this issue. Why don't they do it? Because we have stories that play in our head. We have fears, right? The fear of, by the way, there are some people that have the fear of making money. I had a lady, we had a conversation, a relative of mine years and years ago, and she used the word dirty money.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I said, what? I pulled out a dollar bill and I went, nothing dirty about this. What are you talking about? Well, she had a tape in her head that said that people that make a lot of money don't do honest things to get it. Thus, I'll never have a lot of money, and I don't even want a lot of money because I'm unwilling to be dishonest. And you go, where in the world did you get that? Right? So we have these tapes that play in our head. Oh, I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of embarrassing myself. I'm afraid of not helping people and harming them. When I got into real estate, and I had fears too, but I read a line that changed my life. And it was the definition of a professional. Can I tell you what it is?
Yep.
For me. So I read this line, and it said, a professional is someone who knows what they know, knows what they don't know, and knows the difference between the two. So when they know, they tell you. When they don't know, they don't fake it. They go to their resources and find the answers. And here I am at 20, just turned 22, right, in a new city I've never been in before. I have a few $100s in my pocket, right, after I get my license and rent a small apartment and all of that. And I went, you know what? That's just going to be my line. So I sit down with a seller. I don't own a home. My washer and dryer are coin operated. I'm driving a Volkswagen Beetle I inherited from an aunt. right? Do I look like someone who's going to go help, this individual sell their home? But my comment to them was, I have a degree in real estate. I was a broker by the time I was 21 years old. I've already been in this industry a couple of years because I worked for the richest man in the city where I went to college. I worked in his real estate company. So I understand real estate really well, but I'm a professional. And a professional is someone who knows what they know, knows what they don't know, knows the difference. Yeah, they'll find out. So by the way, if I know, I will tell you. If I don't know, I have a massive resource in the company behind me. I will find the right answer for you. So you will always get the right answer from me. And that's important to you, isn't it?
I think people are attracted to that level of humility.
It's honest too. Nobody knows all the answers. The idea that a professional is someone who knows all the answers, be careful with that one.
Right. So I want to go back to this topic of fear because you wrote the book Shift to help agents navigate tough markets. And I think you could argue that for the past several years, it's been a tough market for a broad swath of the industry.
And it went up, right? COVID took it all the way up to highs we'd never experienced before, right? Unbelievable highs.
And then it's been a bit of a drought since then. And so
because we borrowed buyers from the future. Everybody that was sitting at the starting line or thought they were moved their timelines forward, and they just assumed all the inventory.
Right. I think you could argue that there's also this pent-up supply and demand now, given how rates have changed.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. It's flipped. Now that here we are a few years later, and we have pent-up demand again. There's no question about that.
That's right. And so what's your read on where we are in the market cycle? What are you hearing from your network?
Well, the challenge it's all about the economy. The challenge, so the way I think about this is I have a model. And the way I think about it is the way the federal government thinks about it, or should, most analysts. And that is, number one, are people employed? Do they have jobs? If they don't, we got to stop. We have a big problem. We need to get people employed, right? Number two, are they earning fair wages? Okay, if they're not, we got a problem. Number three, are they consuming? GDP. Are they out spending that money? And the last one is inflation. And that is, are they overpaying? So you can literally, if you understand the economy, because we have a consumption economy in America. It's all a consumption economy. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But if you have a box in your head, can I digress 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. So I read a book called Super Learning. You don't need to read it. I'm going to tell you the answer. But I read it back again, 40 years ago or whatever. And it said that people remember, they assemble things when they're in geometric shapes. And number two, we take snapshots. So snapshots and symbols, put things into shapes. Because what happens is the first thing that you memorize or that you remember is the shape. Okay? And then your brain fills in the squares or circles or rectangles or triangles or whatever it is, right? So when you see me go like this, and all you're seeing me do is instinctively, without thinking about it, putting up my hands to show you that in my mind, I'm looking at a model when I'm talking to you. I have a snapshot of the four things that drives the economy. So here's the challenge we have today. Are people employed? Yes. Now, employment numbers are fixed to come out. We'll see, because it's been inching up a little bit. By the way, are they being paid great wages? The answer is yes. Number three, are they consuming? Oh yeah, GDP. Now GDP is slowing down, but GDP is still in a reasonably healthy place for this economy. It's not anemic to the point where you're going, oh my gosh, people aren't spending. Their spending is growing. And then number four, are they overpaying for things? Yes, they are. Right. In real estate, they are. So you look up and you go, well, what's the answer to that? And I hate to tell you this, but we're going to have some sort of economic calamity or economic event.
Reckoning.
There has to be something in order to drive prices down, right? You can't expect any seller to have some sort of a philanthropic view and go, oh, I shouldn't charge that for my house. Right? No, we're all going to say, look, I'm going to sell for the most amount of money I can. So market forces will determine the value of the property. And we are building up inventory. It's now happening. And, give this another 6 months or so, and we will absolutely, if not there, be nationally in some sort of a more buyer's market than seller's market. And then sellers have choices to make. But here's the thing we have to remember. Somewhere the floor for home sales in America is hovers around that 4 million transactions, 8 million sides. Okay. And the reason why is that death, divorce, relocation, move up, move down, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting, right? You think about it. 54% of all first marriages fail. 65% of second marriages fail. 75% of third marriages fail. It's fascinating, right? So what I'm only chuckling just to make a point, and that is, so get in there with married couples, because half of them are going to, sell them a home, because half of them are come back and list with you, and that'll turn into 3 transactions. Sell one, help the other 2 lease or buy. And then if they get married, stay with them, because 65% of them, they're going to turn into another transaction. Yeah. And that's all. And by the way, that's all in less than 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Less than 20 years.
Less than 20 years for that cycle to go. So my point is that what we have to understand as real estate professionals is the market absolutely is going to give us demand and supply, because people are just living their lives.
Well, when you talk about the floor being 4 million transactions, is that your way of saying that it's only uphill from here? Like we're already at the floor.
Yeah, if you look at, again, when you look at models, you always ask the question, what does history inform us about what could happen in the future?
Right.
Otherwise, on what basis are you predicting anything? You have no basis. So you look in the past, and what we understand is that when things go down, the floor doesn't pop back up. It typically runs, go study the cycles. It typically runs 3 to 5 years. So how many years are you in the bottom right now?
3. Yeah.
You're in year 3. That's right. So you look up and you go, well, what's my expectation that would change this year? Unless there's an economic calamity that immediately the Fed changes their mind and says, we have to drop rates. And because the economic calamity will drive unemployment up, and unemployment is ground zero for the federal government to take action. Because when people are unemployed, we got all kind of problems. Everything starts with, does someone have a job that's able to work? So we've been on the floor now for about 3 years, and the odds are, unless there's a calamity, my predictions have always been, so look, if we want to just model and be on the safe side, if nothing else changes, none of this is going to change until start beginning to see the change in 2026, probably by the summer of 2026. That would be a normal economic recovery cycle. If it stayed longer than that, okay, you're off the trends now. Something else is happening.
Right. Well, even if it takes a year, what would be your advice to agents who are looking to thaw their business, even if the market hasn't picked up yet?
Yeah. So here's the thing so congratulations, you got into the real estate sales industry. This idea that every year is going to be a better year isn't a truly realistic thought process. Only people that have that are people that have never gone through economic cycles.
Sure.
Which we have a whole generation of people in our profession today who only knew the upside. They only knew it. They got in after the Great Recession. So if they got in after 2010 or 2011, my gosh, they've had, they had 12 years, 11 years, which is unheard of. It's by the way, it's recorded as the greatest length of time of any recovery in recorded history.
Wow.
Yeah, it was because the cycles are typically would have been more like 7 or 8. So we should have already gone through one and come out. What extended it?
COVID. Yeah.
COVID extended it. That's exactly right. So I look up and I say, first things first, and that is make sure that your personal financial life is in order and you haven't overdebted yourself so that you don't wake up in the morning and have put extreme pressure on yourself to make large minimum sums of money. We have a lot of people that do that. And they do the napkin math and say, oh my gosh, at these prices, and if I can get a good commission on this, I only need to sell blank in order to make bank for my life. And you're going, okay, well, that's going to be a little harder than you think. But so if you can take your economic pressure off, that's what you should do, right? As much as you can. Stop spending. Just stop on anything that isn't a necessity. And number 2, recognize that your goal is to have a great career, not necessarily a better year every year. So my advice to everyone is do not stray from the fundamentals. The fundamentals are absolutely true. Real estate is a contact sport. You know that. You built a business around it.
Oh yeah, I was going after FSBOs. So you have to like chewing glass to go after FSBOs.
Not necessarily. My first listing was a FSBO, Gene Volley Smith. I pulled up. I did exactly what the book says. I'm 22 years old. Never been in the city before. I pull up. There's a sign. I call the number because I had one of those. I bought it. One of those phones, right? And I call him and I met him at the house. And halfway through the presentation, just conversation, he said, "How much would you charge me to handle all this for me?" And I went, "Oh my gosh, this probably will never happen again, right?" My first buyer was a cash buyer from an open house. So I totally spoiled, right?
Right.
Yeah. But by the way, I got real estate in 79. Interest rates went to 18%. So I look at people today and I said, boo-hoo, 7%.
I was going to say, for people who are complaining about interest rates, don't forget that they were in the teens.
And here's what happened. There was a 6 to 7 month period that by the way, I went 5 months and didn't close anything because rates were climbing and everyone's going, oh my, Chicken Little, the sky's falling. And I watched I can't tell you how many experienced agents sat on the sideline and said, well, I would never buy a home at that rate. No one should do it. And they quit working. They just sat until things got better. And I looked up and I said, wow, I have a strong work ethic. I'm going to work every day. I'm going to show up and treat it like a job. I'm going to put in my 8 or 9 hours a day of focus on being a real estate professional. And I'm going to do the work. And that is real estate's contact sport. So remember, I got in real estate before there were computers, right? MLS was a book and you had a silent whisper, thermal paper printer that was in your office that accessed MLS. And that's the only way we got information. You had to stand in line to get on the computer because you only had so many in the office. And so I just kept doing the job, by the way. And at the end of the full year, I hit all my goals. I made all the money I set to make. I bought my first condo, got a new car, got a dog, got some Cerwin-Vega tower speakers like this tall, like 4 feet tall, and took the last month off. I did it in 11 months. And that's with 5 months with no closings.
5 months?
Yeah. I sold 6 houses my first month in the business. I'm the guy you wanted to hire. 5 of them closed.
And where did those deals come from?
Oh, well, my first one was a FSBO. My second one was open house. My third, yeah. I mean, literally, I was calling expireds. I mean, I did exactly, and I didn't think anything about it. I called newlywed couples out of the newspaper. I said, Andrew, I saw in the paper that you recently got married. I want to say, first, congratulations. Number 2, is there any real estate needs that you possibly might need? So I just literally engaged in just talking to people about real estate, right?
So I want to go back to this. I want to go back to this tough market though, because mindset is a big piece of it. I think in your book Shift, you said get real, get right. So, we talked about that a little earlier in this conversation, and then cutting back expenses and just being prudent about your finances. What about the growth side of it? Is it database strategy? Is it lead gen?
Yes. Well, understand, when the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Project was, I, I 90% of that book was written out of my notes. The premise of that book is that your database is your business. That was the premise of the book. And that's still true today. So someone says, I'm not making the sale. Here's the conversation. Okay. I'm not making the sales I want to make in this market. Okay. Any market, by the way. Let's say this market. Okay, great. So Andrew, let me ask a question. Do you have enough leads that if you converted them, you would make the sales? If you say no, then I stop and I say, you have a lead generation problem. You're not talking to enough people. You're not making enough contacts. You're not getting enough people to be attracted to you. So let's stop here. Let's focus on that problem. Tell me what you're doing. Right? Yes. And what we know is over time, building the Millionaire Real Estate Agent database, this idea of grossing $1 million, maybe even making $1 million, is extremely possible, all built around having a large enough database that you contact and work with, right? So you focus on lead gen. But if you answer, so I turn to anyone today and I'd say, you have an issue. In normal times, 2 to 3 hours a day of contact time, where you're either prepping and doing your mails or your social media, or you're making your calls, whatever it is you're doing that has touch and has reach. 2 to 3 hours a day, get in there, get your favorite cup of tea or whatever, and invest 2 to 3 hours before noon doing that. But when the market shifts like this, and all of a sudden, your number of viable leads are getting less, you have a lead generation issue. And again, you're going to have to put in more time or more money. Something's going to have to give for you to get what we said in Shift was your unfair share. Most real estate people walk around and go, well, if I just get my fair share, I'm going to be successful. And I go, oh my God, what book did you ever read that said the secret to success in life is getting your fair share? Your fair share would be average. That's like,
Right.
That's like getting married or getting engaged. Honey, I want you to marry me. By the way, we're going to have an average wedding. We're going to have an average married life. We're going to have average kids. We're going to eat average food, drive average cars, live in an average house, take average vacations. We'll have average lives. We'll be average, but it's going to be awesome.
I do have a question about focus though, because The One Thing is a book that really changed my life. And, when you talk about where your first 5 transactions came from, they came from essentially 5 different channels. And if there is an agent or a team in this tough market, do you advise that they focus on one channel, one strategy, just focus on database?
It's 4. They have 4 main sources, whatever they are. And one is always database. Always database. And when you interview those individuals who have oversized businesses, 80% at least, it's a database.
Yeah. And I think that buying new leads can be a distraction. It can give you that dopamine hit. But I built the whole business around database nurture. And we often think that agents and teams have what we call a dead base of stale leads, right? Because, they don't do enough to nurture their database. And really the deals are hiding in there.
So they have 4 sources. And they also have 3 minor sources. Incidentals, sign calls, things like that, right? That are inconsequential individually, but would add up to a nice bucket of 10 to 15% of their income. Inbound referrals from agents across the country, blah, 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 blah. This is where I tell people, look, here's the interesting thing about success. Think of this as a success pyramid, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is the bottom, this is the top. Okay? Lowest performer, top performer. If your goal is to be in the lower performing category down here, do whatever you want. Choose any methodology you want. Don't pay attention to the number 4 or whatever. Just do whatever. But as you start saying, I want to climb the ladder and I want to be up here in the upper 5% or 10% of the industry, they all look the same. This is the challenge in life. If you want to have peak physical health, we're all going to be doing fundamentally the same thing, Andrew. If you don't want peak physical health, do whatever the heck you want. Live however you want, exercise how you want, eat whatever crap you want to put in your body. I mean, just go ahead. But if you want, right? By the way, if you want to have the best partnership or marriage, if you want to help your kids be the most well-adjusted, I promise you, you get in a room with others who are also pursuing excellence in that area, they all sound alike.
Right. And if you're spending a lot of time with those top teams, those top agents, and there are 4 sources of business, database is one of them. What would you say the other top 3 are?
Yeah, farming. Today, social media has jumped in there and taken on a huge part, right? And then marketing, right? Direct mail and or ad placement in some form or fashion. And those become the bucket. So number 1, it's your database. The challenge with your database is you gather it from everywhere. Farming is now taking a slice of that database, right? And filling it out based upon a geographic territory. So, because what happens is when you just work a database business, here's your problem. It will not be seller focused.
Right.
Yeah, it won't be. This is the challenge of being 100% database. You will be over-indexed on buyers.
Sure. And those buyers will become sellers.
Right. So yes. So geographic farming is how you balance that out. Is picking a territory and going in and trying to have an unfair share of that market over time. Marketing is this idea of attracting, right? This idea of I could use park benches, I could use billboards, right? The number 1 team in Keller Williams today is all built 100% only on social media. Their spend is so small, it's ridiculous. Because social media, the placement of it, and the filming and the placement of it can be almost zero. And then as you grow, you'll invest in better equipment or someone helping you, someone placing it, blah, 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 all of that. But number one in KW.
All right, I know we're a little short on time, so I want to keep things moving here. Real quick, I would love for you to comment just on the challenges that brokerages are facing today, because as tough of a time as agents are having, there's no question that brokerages are hurting. And why do you think that is? What are the challenges for brokerages today?
They're spending too much money and they're not providing value for what they charge. It's that simple. Yeah. People, just like you tell a seller, it's not what you pay me, it's what I net you.
What should they be cutting back on in terms of expenses?
Office rent, most likely.
Right.
Yeah, office rent. This idea, I'm going to make some statements, and they're my opinions. That's why you're interviewing me. But the idea of running 100% digitally based business has limitations to it, and the reason is because we're social in nature, and at some point we want physical interaction. And oh, by the way, we've experimented with this. Meaning that we have masterminds and training classes, and then we'll open it up to Zoom if you can't make it. Invariably, the people that are on Zoom or whatever go, I'm coming next time in person. Thank you so much. I couldn't be there. Kids graduating, blah, 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 all these things. So thank you. I took lots of notes, but honestly, it doesn't compare. So the brokerage, well, I mean, look, I've looked at the numbers of the digital brokerages and they don't make money. The idea that fully digital, if you don't manage your pennies and dollars, will be more profitable is a financial lie. They have the same challenges as the physical broker, and that is they have to manage their costs. They have a different cost problem. But in the physical business, right, we have a physical location, we have a clubhouse, if you will. We have a management team in the clubhouse. We have a community in the clubhouse. We have a culture in the clubhouse, right? Number one is just the physical space itself. That's the challenge. And it's in good times, spaces expand. And in bad times, you're begging the landlord, "Can I give it back?" And that's the issue.
And so where is the North Star for Keller Williams in terms of in-person versus digital? Is it more of a hybrid? People can come together, congregate, trade ideas.
Hybrid is yeah. You can either say I'm physically based and digitally enhanced, or digitally based and physically enhanced. But if you tried to be all physical or you tried to be all digital, you're not going to hit the widest audience.
And where does KW fall on that spectrum?
Well, we're physically based, digitally enhanced. I mean, you can see that. I mean, we're clearly that. From Keller Williams Realty International standpoint, we're digitally based, right? I mean, we start with this idea that everything is available online. You can go to Connect, and we even have AI called Ask Gary. And everything I've written, everything I've done has been poured into AI, and it's trained to answer the questions.
Gotcha.
So you can do all that digitally, but at the end of the day, if it's not backed up, right? Okay, I ask a question. Could you raise your kids digitally?
Wouldn't work out too well.
How about your marriage? Would that work out if you guys were just digital?
Nope.
Okay, well, there you go then. The challenges of Keller Williams is no different. And that is, the challenge for us is at an individual broker to broker level. Each of our owners have some have the same problems, some have unique problems. But at the end of the day, it's just value for money. We're all value shoppers. We wake up in the day. And by the way, there are models that say, we're not going to charge you much because we're not going to do anything. And the agent looks up and says, in the absence of anyone providing me value that I would pay for, I'm just going to eat the cheap stuff.
Right.
Right? I mean, and that makes sense. And there's a market, anywhere the market has a gap in value, cheap shows up and can wedge in there and get a piece of that market. But I look up and I say, look, there's over 1.4 or so million licenses. At its worst, it'll be 1, 2, something like that. Okay? I mean, it's just where it's going to be. There's room for every flavor of ice cream from a value perspective to be successful and profitable.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a stratification of services that, brokerages can provide, right? You have the self-serve all the way through the full service.
That's it. So I think the challenge with brokerage is no different with agents, because most agents have not defined their value. If you were to sit down and say, explain your value to me, what do you provide sellers in order to market their home? What's your marketing plan? By the way, buyers, what's your service plan with buyers? That people look up and go, that has real value. I'm more than willing to pay you, what you want. And then we have transaction coordination and contract to close. There's your buckets. That's your you see me drawing this. That's your value box right there. Can you go ahead off the top of your head, pitch me? 99% of real estate agents can't do it. They immediately want to fall back and say, well, our brokerage is number one in the world and it does this or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that can carry some weight. But at the end of the day, consumers hire real estate agents. They don't hire companies. The company comes with the agent. The agent doesn't come with the company, right? It doesn't. So brokerages have the same challenge. You do too. I do too. Every day we charge for value. And the question is our value worth it? Is what we're charged, does that math work for someone?
And that's a nice segue. I had some burning questions just about KW and where you are in your story arc. It's been a busy time at KW. You recently announced you have a new CEO. You have an investment from private equity. First up, given my passion in prop tech, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about tech strategy. And a few years ago, KW made an ambitious move to build proprietary technology and become a tech company. What did that experience teach you? Where do you stand now in terms of tech strategy?
Well, we have a challenge, and that is the proliferation of lawsuits. Right. I went through a period where I'm not going to quote a number, but it would catch your breath that we had to pay in lawsuits, and we didn't do it. We didn't do any of this. But the lawyers found a way to get in anyway. And we looked up and we said, you know what? We got to stop the liability train. The problem with that is that because we own the software, we took a position of we can't really be aggressive on APIs that touch the consumer because we're going to get sued. If the agent, because what happens today, the reason why we had so many legal issues is if an agent did something, they just went straight to us. In the old days, you said, well, we're a franchise. That's not us. Then lawyers decided to make an argument. No, you trained them. You gave them material. You're liable, right? So we're in the final stages. I'm not going to go into details, but we're in the final stages of finally resolving all of that so that we can unlock. When Stone Point came in and analyzed Keller Williams, it might surprise you that they hired an outside firm to come in and audit our technology. And this, my partners own CoreLogic. They own Lone Wolf. They're not new to real estate. Everyone who's listening to you is in business with my partners in some way.
Right.
They are. And candidly, our partners said, we only want to do business with the best. You're the best. We would like to be in business with you. But they studied Command, our fundamental software program. They came back, the analysts came back and said, this is the most robust CRM in the entire industry. This is the most robust.
So Gary, it sounds like the lawsuits kind of slowed down or hamstrung your tech initiatives.
So the lawsuits hampered it, which meant I looked up and I said, I got a challenge for my partners. Everyone who's in business with me, I'm working out of my pocketbook, but all my competitors are now public. They're all public. I'm the only private guy sailing. We still are private, by the way, but it's just my money. These other companies, it's not any of their money. And so that's what led me to say, I need a partner that has untold access to capital, depending upon the needs, right? So anyway, again, you would imagine with CoreLogic having more data than anybody, and then Lone Wolf touching over 1.1 million agents in technology, you can imagine the conversations we're now having.
Right. Well, I'm sure you're not able to share too much on that yet, but I'm excited to see how that develops. And you've mentioned Stone Point a couple times now. Just for everyone listening, if you're not familiar with how these types of deals work, these private equity firms invest money into companies to help them grow faster, to pursue new opportunities. And in return, they get a stake in the business and a seat at the table for major decisions. They usually have a timeline in mind for eventual exit, whether that's going. Is that not the case, Gary?
No, that's not Stone Point. No. What attracted me to Stone Point was when they came into our office building here, which we own in a partnership. They said, I'm not going to name the name, but it's such and such insurance company. This looks familiar. Are they in the building? And we went, well, yeah, they're a tenant on the second floor. They said, well, we bought them in 2008. And they said their EBITDA was $8 million. Last year it was $300 million. And I didn't hear the EBITDA growth, Andrew. I heard they were still in business with them.
So they have a buy and hold. They may pursue a buy and hold strategy.
Well, yeah. They're like any other business that raises funds and invests those monies. They have returns that they have to maintain. But if they can get those returns by not selling, they're okay with that too. They're not. They don't wait. Yeah, they didn't walk up. They didn't wake up and say, "Look, we're going to buy you and flip you," sort of a thing.
Gotcha. And why bring on a private equity partner now? It's been, I think, 4 decades.
Money and expertise and access. Here's the interesting thing: The day after it was all announced, the phone started ringing. Not to me, to my partners, who are one of the most respected investment firms in the world. And the phone started ringing. Well, by us. Well, can we partner? And the next thing you knew, our partners are sitting at the table with me. And I love my partners, by the way. They're wonderful people and really, really good at what they do. And they sat down with me and they said, man, everybody wants to do business with you, literally. They're all calling us and saying, well, could y'all use us? What could we do? Sort of thing. He said, and by the way, we're sorting through all of that and the opportunities from a technology standpoint, from a data standpoint, and from acquisitions or mergers. All that's on the table, Andrew, and it wasn't on the table 6 months ago. None of that was on the table because I had self-funded all the lawsuits. I had self-funded everything. And now I'm not.
And so will this investment allow you to move quicker? What are the opportunities you're looking to pursue with this extra capital?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you that. I was just going to say fundamentally because it's none of your business.
All right. That's fair enough. I'll take it. Further, though, when we look at the industry as a whole, it seems like so many brokerages and national brands are taking on private equity. What do you think that trend says about where the industry is headed or the challenges that it faces?
Well, number one, technology is very expensive, as you know, right? So depending upon what your ambition is and what you're trying to accomplish, at the end of the day, the person who has the deepest pocketbook has an unfair financial advantage. And if you don't have that much money, then you have to be more nimble, more focused, right? Yes. It requires you to sharpen your saw, maybe to a degree that you can, or maybe to a degree that you look up and go, I don't want to. So the fact that today the real estate industry is now, and Sundance started that back when they started acquiring C21 and ERA, all that, Coldwell Banker. So this is nothing new. Merrill Lynch used to be in the real estate business, right? They sold that to Prudential. Yeah.
So when you look ahead 3 to 5 years, what do you want the industry to say about the next chapter of KW?
Oh, I never thought about that because I never really cared. I don't.
Well, even the people in your network, right? The market centers, the franchisees, the agents.
That's a separate question. You're asking me, the wrong question. That we were a good partner.
Okay.
That's it. What I want my partners to say, I want to be able to say they were good partners, agents and market centers, and I want them to be able to say we are.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. If we can answer that question, that means we all were on the path and journeying the way we wanted to journey, and that's what matters.
Well, that seems like a great place to wrap things. Anything else you want to share, Gary?
No, I'm just really proud of you. I'm excited for what you do. I think you've made a difference in the world, and I'm really grateful for what you do.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. And for those of you who don't know my personal story with Keller Williams, I started my entire career in real estate while in high school, working at Keller Williams Realty. It taught me a lot about what I know about real estate, and I continue to learn from Gary. So, Gary, thank you for taking the time and for being so candid for the listeners out there. I know you don't do this often.
I don't do it at all.
It means a lot, and I know I probably won't see you on the circuit out there because you're busy providing value. But maybe I'll see you in Austin. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, bye now. If the listeners out there enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening. And if you want more episodes like this, go ahead and take a screenshot, post it on social, and tag me so I know that it resonated with you. This is the Playmakers Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Flachner, and we'll see you next time.